Hello Misfitians, and welcome to another video. So as promised, this is the last video of the paper series that I have been putting together, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts with you over the whole entire series, because actually some of the papers that I liked didn't end up in the final rounds, and I wanted to kind of discuss with you the different brands. A lot of you were saying that, you know, I wasn't necessarily doing all the brands, and y'all, I can't afford all of that. I can't afford every single brand, but basically I was trying to show different brands and specific papers that I could get my hands on and kind of the differences, because I would say one of the biggest struggles when I first started watercolor was finding the right paper that matched with me. And I have to say, even through this series, I was actually surprised at what papers I liked and which ones I didn't. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a good paper and you're not fully satisfied with the one that you have that you're painting on right now, try and invest a little bit of money and try different brands, and even check out some of the paintings that I did with the brands that I showed you. And if you like the style of how it was painted on, test it out. And a good way to do that, and a cheap way to do that, is instead of buying the packets of paper, so instead of buying like a packet like this, buy it in a sheet form. It's actually a lot cheaper, and you can get these large sheets and they can send them to you. It is a little bit of a shipping cost. I think it's like $3 for shipping. But that being said, that's the cheaper way to test out paper. And I will say I got a couple of sheets of paper, so I won't be able to show like the exact brand. I'll put it on the screen for you. But I did get a lot of like these, but the reason why and how I got them was over the months, because remember, I've been collecting papers for about a year. I would go to a store, or I would wait for a coupon online, and then I would buy this 50% off. So that also was another way that I saved money to purchase these papers and purchase them online. And a lot of them actually I purchased during the Black Friday sales. They always check your local art stores, and especially online, because there are a ton of coupons around Black Friday. It's the best time to pick up watercolor supplies. So I purchased a lot of these actually from Black Friday 2 years ago, and one like last Black Friday. So this has been almost a 2-year series in the making. I've been collecting these along and along. So anyway, that being said, I know all of you are itching to know which paper actually won the series. And I'm gonna tell you first off which one was like the loser kind of type thing. Of the three, y'all pretty much guessed it. The third one was B paper. That was the third one. But the other two, which y'all also guessed, was either between Arches and Fabriano. So I'm gonna hold that off until the end, because I know once I tell you that, you're just gonna click off. I would do the same thing. So I'm gonna hold that until the end and kind of discuss with you my thoughts on the papers that I worked on and painted throughout this series first, and then at the very end, I'll show the winner. And I'll also discuss my thoughts on what y'all chose as well as what I chose and whether they match up or not. So look forward to that. Anyway, the first thing that I want to do is go over the different brands of papers that I used in this series. Now, I have a blog post, and I've been linking that blog post for all of these videos on the specific brands of paper that I used for this series. So if you're like interested and you want a direct link to Amazon, it's on my blog. So you can find the exact paper that I used and not really have to go typing the exact name and all of that stuff. I actually have links on my blog for that, as well as thoughts for each paper. So that blog post is actually very similar to what I'm going to be talking about today in this video. However, let's go ahead and go through the papers that I have here. So this is the first one. This actually I started painting on, I think, when I was in middle school, and it's Canson XL. I still have a very dear place in my heart to this paper. It is not the best paper, as we saw in the series, but it was a great paper for me to start out with, especially when I couldn't afford any of, like, I was basically buying this type of paper with my own money from allowance. So this was a great paper for me to start with, and it has a very special place in my heart. But that being said, I feel like, and as you saw in the series, it just doesn't absorb paint the way I really want it to as an adult, or as someone who is wanting to pursue watercolor with more seriousness. This paper was more like testing it out and seeing, am I interested in this or not? So that was the first brand that I actually owned as a kid, and so I wanted to share that with you. This is the Strathmore brand, and some of you were saying that there are actually better Strathmore brands out there. I think the 400 series y'all were saying in the comments. I really do want to test that particular brand out, but I could not find that brand when I was doing all the research, trying to get it on sale, to be perfectly honest. But I know this is not the best paper, but I was curious because I always used Canson XL as a kid, and this was the other paper that was available to me. And I was curious, I had never really painted on this one. I always used their mixed media paper. You can actually see it in the background. I love their mixed media paper. It's one of my favorite papers to draw on. But I was curious about how their watercolor paper would kind of go up against Canson XL, because this is also another beginner watercolor paper. And it didn't do that well, but it wasn't horrible, as we all saw. The one that was the worst of the entire series was this one right here, and I was very disappointed in this paper. I honestly thought it would do better, especially since it's this brand. I love their brushes. Their brushes are fantastic. I own pretty much all Grumbacher brushes. I just can't rave enough about them, but their paper did not do well in the series. And out of these two, this one was worse. So if you're looking for a paper that you just want to play around with and test on, Canson XL and this Strathmore series paper were the better of the three for cheaper papers. That being said, this is the next cheaper paper that I highly, highly recommend, and this is B paper. This is probably a newer favorite of mine. I started painting on this maybe 3 years ago, and I absolutely love it. If you want a cheaper paper that you just want to play around with, but at the same time you want to invest a little bit more, because this one is a little bit more expensive than the Canson and the Strathmore that I showed you there, this one is one that I would highly recommend. It is made of 100% cotton, which, if y'all haven't watched my video about what watercolor paper is made of, there is a reason why 100% cotton is better of a paper. So if you're looking for a better paper, look for 100% cotton material. And this brand is one that I highly, highly recommend. And this is the specific type. I actually have other B paper pads, and I have tested those and I did not like them as well as this journal. I feel like the paper is a lot thicker, and I don't know, I felt like it just absorbed the paper more. Plus you get a lot of paper. I think I've actually used some of these sheets. So this one you get a lot more, and I highly recommend this paper. I love it. But as we saw, it can't stand up against the more artist grade papers. It just can't. So if you're looking for something where you just want to play around, but you don't want to invest a lot of money, but you want a good quality paper, this one is the one that I highly recommend. I use this paper and I have tons of spiral bounds. I totally stock up on this when it's Black Friday and I can use all of my 40% off coupons. I stock up on this particular paper, and this is the paper that I use to test my colors out, to do my color mixing, all of that stuff. Basically, this is my exploratory paper. I prefer artist grade paper to do illustrations on, but this paper I still do just exploring with my colors and my paints, as well as trying out new techniques with illustrations, and I don't really want to waste more expensive paper. So this paper I highly recommend. So this is the next paper that I'm going to be talking about. This is the specific brand that I use for Winsor & Newton, and I have to say, out of all the papers that I've painted on, this one is not necessarily my favorite. I like it. It's not that I don't like it, but when I compare it to other papers that I really like, this one is not my favorite. That being said, there are a lot of artists who absolutely love this paper. Now, I do know there is a more expensive specific paper brand to this. I think this is the cheaper one of the two. I'm almost positive it is, but I couldn't get my hands on the other one. The other one has kind of it's fully gray. I think it's called the Professional Series, which I would assume is more of the artist grade. I would like to try that, and I am thinking about doing this series maybe again in a year. But because I really enjoyed it. I loved doing this. I know y'all all loved doing this and stuff and kind of learning along with me. I would like to try different brands next time, but for right now, I will say this one was not my favorite paper to paint on. I can't really say anything necessarily negative about it. There was nothing really negative about it, but for me, the feel of it wasn't the same as what I enjoy in my other papers. And that's, as I said, paper is very much a personal preference. And I felt like this paper I was fighting a little bit more compared to some of the other ones. So that being said, this was the specific brand that I used for Winsor & Newton. Now, I don't have, these are the ones that I bought in sheets. So I'll show you images of what the specific brands are for that. But there was Canson, Montrell, I'm probably saying that completely wrong. But that paper, I felt like that paper was kind of a meh paper for me. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't something that I really enjoyed on. So I'm not going to put a lot of thoughts into that. That was one of the sheets that I bought. Now, Saunders. I actually really enjoyed painting on Saunders. And I think I might invest some money into that and play around with it a little bit more. That was one that I bought in a sheet, and I really enjoyed that paper. Even though it didn't end up in the final rounds, I really enjoyed how much it seemed to just soak up the color and make it look really brilliant and just beautiful. So I definitely want to play around with that one a little bit more. But that being said, these three that I'm going to be talking about next are, I would say, probably my favorite, besides bee paper, that I painted on for the entire series. And this might surprise you, but I really like this brand. One of the reasons why I really like it is because it paints as if it's cold press, but its texture acts more like hot press. And recently I've noticed I'm liking more of the smoother tooth. I actually want to play around with a little bit of hot press, different brands of hot press, watercolor paper, but I really like this particular paper. That being said, as we saw in the series, this particular paper does not do well with a lot of water. So if you're using a lot of water in wet and wet loose techniques, this paper is not that great. But I don't actually use a lot of wet and wet loose techniques. I do more dry on wet and then kind of allow colors to mix and merge next to each other. So putting two kind of dry wet on wet colors right next to each other, and then what happens is they blend together. That's more of the approach that I do because I have more control over it, and that works really well with this brand of paper. So that being said, I really like this particular brand of paper, and I'm going to continue to invest in it. Even though it didn't end up in the final rounds per se, I really like this one. So those are my thoughts for that. And the next two, which are our final battle ones, is Arches and Fabriano. And this is the specific paper that I got for Fabriano. I know some of you were asking, and I have to say, out of these two, I enjoyed painting on this one more. I didn't think I would, to be honest. I have always been a Arches diehard fan, and I still am. I feel like it's always been reliable. Whatever I try and throw at it, it will take it, and it will take abuse. So I'm still considering this one, and you'll probably see in the blog post, as number one. I feel like it's the most versatile paper out of all the ones that I painted on, and that is because it just can take a lot of abuse. Even though this is only 140-pound paper, it just is built to withstand a lot of abuse. That being said though, I really enjoyed painting on this one, and I want to do some more testing on it and playing around with it with different illustrations and different techniques, and see how it does against those illustrations and techniques, and how far I can push it and whatnot. So that being said, getting back to which paper actually won. Y'all voted, and out of these two, Arches won hands down. 73%, I believe it was, I'll put the poll up here, actually won with Arches. Y'all love the brightness of the color, and it just accepts color so easily. And it, like I said earlier, it just takes a lot of abuse. So if you do something wrong, there's a lot of ways that you can fix it and you can push it, and it's just really a nice paper to paint on. That being said though, my favorite actually to paint on for the entire series was the Fabriano. I really enjoyed this, and I think the reason why I liked it is, once again, it goes back to the tooth of the paper. When you look at the tooth of the Fabriano compared to the tooth of the Arches, and I hope that I can show this to you. I actually have something, I've been doing some painting. But the tooth of this paper, maybe you can kind of see it, is really heavy. It's a heavy texture. And I'm finding personally myself, I like the smoother tooth. And I think that's the reason why I'm more inclined to these two. And even B paper has a smoother tooth compared to the other papers that I painted on for this series. So that just goes to show you that paper is very much a personal preference, because it really depends on what you want. I personally like a smoother tooth paper. I'm probably more of a hot press, to be honest, girl, but at the same time, I like the ease of painting on cold press. So for my personal preference, I'm okay taking a little bit of a hit on vibrancy in order to get that really smooth texture, so that I can add more details such as ink work, and I can add more pencil lines and just really get into the detail portions of the painting and take a picture of it and it not show all of that texture and all of those bumps. However, most of y'all liked the Arches paper because it was so brilliant and so beautiful on camera. So that being said, I'm gonna declare Arches the overall winner for this series. I feel like it is just tried and true. It's a really good paper to paint on. That being said though, my favorite was Fabriano. So I really hope you enjoyed this series, and I hope that you enjoyed kind of seeing the different types of paper that I used for this series, as well as my thoughts for each. Once again, if you want to check out my blog post and get specific links, if you purchase through those links, it actually helps me. It just gives a little bit of extra money this way so I can create more content like this. The only reason why I was able to do this paper series is because of y'all supporting me via courses and purchasing it through links on my blog, as well as just supporting this video, sharing it, liking it, subscribing. All of that helped for me to purchase this stuff so that I could do this series. Anyway, that is it for this video. I am going to be taking a little bit of a break. I have a couple of work-related things coming up that I need to really focus on. And if you're following me on Instagram, you'll know kind of what's coming up. So I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, and then I'm gonna come back with a new series. I've already kind of laid out what I wanna do, and I'm really excited about that one as well. And I think y'all will be too. I'm really excited about it. So I'm gonna take a little bit of time off, and then I'll come back with a brand new series, and also hopefully with a brand new course for all of you to check out as well. So lots of love, y'all, and I will see you in the next video.